Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. And I should kind of tell you all, because if you've been watching this for the last 75 interviews, I've always had a quote Rutgers hat on. Today I have a Legrand coffee shop hat on because I love Eric Legrand, and he means a lot to me. And I interviewed him a while back, and he's just opened up an amazing, wonderful coffee shop. And as soon as I heard, of course, I ordered my Legrand coffee shop hat. So I wanted to say that to Eric. Um, I'm with Michelle Caravella, and I'm going to introduce Michelle shortly. But as I've been doing these interviews, there's been something that I needed to say and do, and that's to talk about nutrition. So I've been actively looking for a nutritionist to chat about, and why. And I think this is so important because it's like life, and we'll talk about that shortly. It's about life, and I think proper nutrition proper nutrition has helped me at my um, middle septuagenarian status, which means I'm in my mid 70s. But it's allowed this thing on top of my shoulders to be functioning at full throttle and to be as sharp as I ever was. And I think that the primary reason is I've had a conscious awareness of proper nutrition for a long, long time, since the 70s, and we'll talk about that. Which means a couple of years ago, I had my coronary arteries looked at, because as you get older, plaque starts to form, and you may need to have a roto-rooter operation to open up your arteries and all kinds of stuff. And I had that test done, and it was zero. So I'm walking around in my 70s with no coronary artery plaque, which means these little blood vessels up here are kind of sharp and functioning, and when I should be cerebrally slowing down at this stage in life, because lots of people my age do, I find I'm still expanding and growing, and I attribute that a lot to nutrition, and that's why I've asked Michelle Caravella to join us, and I'm done with my intro. But what you do, Michelle, is so important. So, best way to start is do a little bit of a bio, tell people who you are, and then we'll kind of jump into some stuff.
Sure. Well, first of all, Calvin, I want to say thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm honored to be that nutritionist that you said you found that you were looking for so long. And I'm just blown away by how you've implemented good nutrition in your own life for so long and so consistently. It's very impressive. So thank you and kudos. And just a little background about me. Yes, I am a registered dietitian, nutritionist. So that is kind of just the fancier way to say that we as dietitians have completed a extensive amount of education in order to hold that credential as a registered dietitian versus just being a nutritionist, because there is a little bit of a difference. So I feel like it's part of my due diligence on behalf of all dietitians to make that discrepancy. And yes, I also, as someone who's passionate about empowering people, especially women, to lead healthy and authentic lives, I was led into nutrition and both spirituality so that I can help coach these women on how to do that. Because unlike yourself, Calvin, there's a lot of people who have really struggled to be consistent and to benefit, therefore, from the greatness, that comes with good nutrition. So that's kind of the type of work that I do as a dietitian and as a coach.
Okay. Um, your company is Normalizing Nutrition. So can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Sure. So normalizing nutrition is just the term that, came to me when I first started even before I started my business. It started as like a food Instagram. Because what I had seen be such a struggle for many people is that nutrition and just healthy eating or just food was anything but just a normal part of someone's life, or for lack of better terms, it was a lot of people, it's not second nature to a lot of people. It's not drama free. Usually it's, you're either dieting or you're not, or you're binge eating or you're restricting, and it's like overcomplicated. So when I thought of that term normalizing nutrition, it just means that you know you have a neutral like take on food and nourishing your body. It's kind of drama free. It doesn't have this, emotional charge over you. So just normalize nutrition, kind of making it a second nature as, brushing your teeth in the morning. That's kind of, I guess, what that means, if you will.
Okay. Also, in what I was pulling out and viewing, you had the words body, mind, and soul, and human design,
Mhm.
and they kind of perked me. So can you kind of talk about what you mean there too?
Yeah. So when I first started as a dietitian and started working with people, I was overly eager to share with them, like, oh, this is what we want to do, nutrition education. This is so empowering and it's going to help your health and, all of these things. And, come to learn that many people were that wasn't enough for many people to make changes, and that it wasn't really like, okay, you want to eat like this because that's going to help keep your body healthy. That didn't really do the trick. And as human beings, something like food isn't just the fuel that nourishes our body, right? There's a lot of reasons why we eat. There's whether that's to celebrate or express love, or to cope with emotions. There's a lot of things that are really wrapped up with food, and especially that relationship with food and how it impacts our physical body. So again, as human beings, things like our weight or the look of our body, that all that stuff is influenced by our food. So I I quickly realized that you know it's not just about the food for people, and it's not just about the health. And people might say, hey, I hear you, I know that I got to eat like this, or that would help me, but I just can't bring myself to do it. Or all of these things, that these complexities, these obstacles that come up for people. So really kind of noticing that and seeing that, we notice, or I quickly learned that, unless we're talking about these other components of human beings being mind and soul, it's going to be really hard to help empower people to nourish their physical bodies, especially when a lot of people use food as a coping mechanism to negative emotions or unfavorable emotions, or people are on the pursuit of thinness to gain worthiness. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Mhm.
very hard to speak into nourishing your physical body when you're not connected to your soul, or you're making up soul nourishment through food, and then your physical health is compromised. So I know that's a long-winded way to kind of
It is, but
answer that, but it's a little complex. So when we find that balance of nourishing not just our body but also our mind and soul, then we can easily nourish our body, if that makes
it
sense.
makes a lot of sense. You're talking to a very spiritual guy here. And the journey that I'm on, and that's why I'm writing my second novel, in part to talk about my journey to spirituality, which is a little bit of a part of. And by the way, I do believe that my choice in 1975 to stop eating anything with four legs,
Mhm.
uh, I do believe that was a spiritual, uh, really a spiritual. gosh, we could talk about this. We'll have to come back and we talk about this. That's a whole nother subject. So moving on. I also, in doing my reading about you and checking and stuff, you also wrote chasing a number on a scale, and how you help people with that phrase, chasing a number on a scale.
Hmm. Yeah, so that tends to be one of the biggest kind of facades, if you will, that, especially with women, they come, they want to, we glorify this external thing that's going to deem us healthy, and even more so, Calvin, worthy. I think that's the common theme, that we have this misconception that if I could just weigh this much, or if I could just look this thin, I'll be worthy, I'll be lovable. And although, people might say, what? Because this is very subconscious, I think, because people don't realize that's what it's about. But a lot of the times, that's kind of what it goes back to when we kind of trace it back. And really, it just becomes a distraction from doing the things that are actually going to nourish yourself, and help you, if you are on a weight loss journey, lose that weight in a healthy manner and sustainably. Because there's a huge thing out there called diet culture, you might have heard of. And although society might glamorize some of that diet culture and fast weight loss, that doesn't mean it's healthy, right, for your physical body, and of course also for your mental health as well. So when we kind of put our value on the scale, or make our only predictor of success from this scale or
Our
health,
number.
our weight,
Mhm.
we do ourselves a disservice. So usually, like when I first get started with someone, we work on that relationship with the scale. We kind of work on neutralizing it, maybe separating ourselves from it, and we really start to redefine what actually determines health, and what really actually makes us healthy and our physical health healthy, beyond the scale. Because sure, the scale is a data marker, or a point of quantitative information, but it's not the whole picture. And we put way too much weight, no pun intended, on that in itself. So that's something we have to kind of work on.
Another thing I pulled from doing my journalistic due diligence is nutrition, not one size fits all. I like that.
Hmm.
Elaborate.
Yeah. So, just like really when we think about the best way to fuel our bodies, or to eat, there's, you know, a lot of people want to follow a diet, or if everyone eats, right? So everyone has opinions. So we make these mistakes that, if you're doing it, then I should do it. Or if this diet says I should do it, or everyone should do it, that means I should do it. And the thing again about nutrition, Calvin, is that, well, one, we all have our own unique, maybe, health needs. So what might look healthy for you might not be healthy for someone who has, maybe kidney disease. And I use this as a quick example because someone who has kidney disease has to avoid or limit certain foods that, for example, are high in potassium or phosphorus. Now, those are nutrients that are very high in what we might all deem as healthy foods. So things like bananas, or things like lean proteins and meat. One person might say, hey, that's really healthy. But if you have kidney disease or special requirements, that's not going to be healthy for you. So the first thing I always say, that's an extreme example. And yes, generally we, there's kind of what I call these laws, I guess, if you will, of like nourishing our physical human bodies. There's a set of macronutrients, there's a set of micronutrients that we all need to fuel our bodies. So yes, there are commonalities, and yet there still might be some differences for depending on what our needs are. And then also, Calvin, what are our personal circumstances and our environments? So it's so quick, we're as humans and people in the health field sometimes, or just in general at large, are so quick to point a finger and say, you got to eat organic, or you got to cook everything from home. However, you want to always take into account, where is that person at right now? Is that feasible in their life? What are they going through? What's accessible to them? So if we don't take that into account and say, you just got to eat like this, what happens to that person? They can easily shut down. They can say, oh, then this is too hard, right? And it encourages that all or nothing thinking, which is the last thing we want to do when it comes to nutrition if we want to make sustainable change. So I don't know if that.
No, well, what I'm gleaning from you, it's involved, and there's so many aspects to good nutrition, and that's why, as I'm gleaning, I'm older and I wasn't aware, like I'm learning from you now and what I've observed, but somebody's journey through proper nutrition should have somebody to guide them, because this is serious stuff. You're talking about life, quality of life, and longevity, and the whole picture. So what I'm beginning to learn, you got a handle on so many different aspects, and why people really should. And I think there's a question that I'm going to ask you later. It's the wave of the future, nutrition. And so you're in a wonderful position to really help and guide. And that's just my feeling. And I'm a poster boy for good nutrition. And for those doubters out there, saying, oh, well, maybe, his father lived to be 120. My studies have told me that the genetic factor of me is only 20%. So the other 80% was controllable through you and proper nutrition. So, and that's anyway. When I was reading about you, I saw the word food freedom. I like that term. What is it?
Well, yeah, so that's coming from the term food freedom, which is pretty big, I guess, in the intuitive eating world, or anti-diet culture. And really that just means, Calvin, that if you're someone who embodies food freedom, that means that you aren't as, you don't fall victim, I guess, if you will, to things like, diet culture or myths, or, you're not as triggered. I know that's like a word going around these days, but you're not as triggered by, or influenced by others. You're kind of sovereign, if you will, with your food choices. You have that freedom to trust yourself when it comes to what you want to eat and things like that.
Okay. To a little bit off topic things, since we're discussing things, I wanted to run this by you. I, like most of the people on the planet, did that 15-20 pound gain because of the pandemic. And I wasn't happy about that. And there's really, if you don't exercise and stuff. And so I did some reading before I even met you as the first nutritionist I ever met. But anyway, I went on one of these semi-fasting diets. So I get up in the morning, and I'm currently in the middle of it. And I get up in the morning and I have half a yogurt, and at 3 o'clock I have a slice of cheese, and I don't know if it's good or bad, but I lost 20 pounds.
Mhm.
Uh, do you have any comments on semi-fasting?
Yeah, I mean, it really, you have to ask yourself, what is the intent behind it? Is that something that you know that's going to work for you? The semi-fasting or intermittent fasting, it's not something that I work on with my clients for a multitude of reasons.
I
However,
figured.
yeah, if it work, if
Yeah,
that
I figured.
Mhm. So if that's your cup of tea, then by all means, but I think, Calvin, you bring up a good point that a lot of people are struggling after the pandemic, and it's easy to beat yourself up. And we just remind ourselves to meet ourselves with compassion. And, like you said, you know what probably got you there, right? The lack of exercise, the more calories we consumed, maybe stress, things like that. So it's nothing to be ashamed of. And it's just like you're aware of what got you there. It could be simple, not easy, to work back towards where you were pre-pandemic, right? So it takes time and patience if you don't do the fasting route. And a lot of people don't necessarily want to do that, have the time and patience, but
It's
it's
hard.
incredible.
M-
Mhm.
but it's interesting. It's hard. I've been doing it for like 3-4 months, and hey, it worked. I mean, I'm I lost that 20, and then four more. So and it's become a little bit of a way of life, and I'm kind of used to it. And hey, it works. I don't look malnourished. But anyway, I wanted just to mention that, and we're going to go really off topic now. I didn't even, but I always like to ask one or two cerebral questions. So I'm going to ask you a cute question, and then we'll go back to nutrition.
Mhm.
So somebody living or dead, not family or friend. Somebody living or dead, not family or friend that you'd like to spend a day with.
Mm. It's funny because Oprah just came to mind. I think because I was talking to Oprah, or what I was talking about Oprah with someone else the other day. I think she would be someone cool to talk to.
Great. I kind of met her, and she liked my socks, and I sent her a picture of my socks, but nothing ever happened from that. So be it. Long story. But anyway, moving along. Oprah's great. She's great. Period.
Mhm.
Um, so next thing, your opinion of taking supplements.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
pros or cons? Uh,
So with supplements, the first thing I always say is that we want to keep in mind that they're supplemental to a healthy, to our diet. So I think it's important for us all to remember that not one supplement is going to ever make up for your lifestyle and your diet at large. Um, and with that being said, depending again on your health, what your needs are, supplements can be something that's going to be really great for you as needed or if needed, depending on what the unique individual needs. So I, as a practitioner, never blindly recommend supplements without well, I never do that unless I see someone's lab work, or some biomarkers, some tests that indicate a supplement is warranted. So I don't promote anything without knowing more about the individual and their health. But yeah, supplements can be a humongous help to your health.
okay. You briefly touched on it. Is there anything else you wanted to add to the topic of nutrition and spirituality? or you kind of covered it. I know you do yoga.
Well, the one thing I will add, and people who might not really be familiar with the spiritual realm, or maybe that sounds woo to them, is that, um, like I might have mentioned earlier, I would encourage you, anyone watching who's maybe doesn't identify with being spiritual, to just be open-minded to slowing down a bit and connecting with yourself. And in my opinion, that's really what spirituality is at the basis of spirituality. um because like I said, you could know everything what to do with nutrition, have the meal plan, the guidelines, whatever. But if you aren't connected to that inner voice, or have that self-awareness, which all of those things are cultivated when you embrace spirituality, or become empowered, if you will, connected to yourself, that's going to be the thing that's going to make it all work. So I'll give you a quick illustration, and then we can move on if you'd like. But I talk about nutrition being like baking a cake. So there's this, the ingredients, so the flour, the sugar, the eggs, that that put together the cake. So that might be, Calvin, when you know what you need to eat, when you have the supplements, you have all the things, right? But in order to have that cake rise and be a cake, so that's you doing the things, meal planning and whatever, what do you need? You need this heat, right? This energy that you can't see to make it work, to rise the cake, to put it together, so it's actually a cake, aka you being successful with your nutrition. That stuff you can't see, Calvin, is that spiritual connection to self. And that's the energy that makes the cake rise. So I would encourage people to just see, because it's easy to avoid the excuses that we make up for ourselves, the limiting beliefs, all of these things that get in our way from baking the cake and benefiting from doing the things with nutrition, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. That's good. Before I forget, and it's important, and of course, on the bottom of the screen, people are going to be seeing all your contact information. But how can people find you?
Sure. So I hang out on Instagram the most, so people can find me there at normalizing_nutrition. You can also visit my website, normalizingnutrition.com. And from there, you can send me an email if you're not on social media. But yes, either of those places.
Okay. You just touched the whole. I was going to ask you about Science and Soul, but you just kind of talked about it. But just as an add-on, why is it important for people to be connected to themselves?
Well, again, Calvin, that connection to yourself, when I say that, it's connection to, again, those stories about, food, about self-worth, all these things that get in our way from doing the things that are going to benefit our physical bodies. Another piece, when I say being connected, is being connected to our physical bodies. So if we are working on not overeating anymore. Let's say you overeat a lot. You're just, and you're maybe in a calorie surplus and you've gained weight over the pandemic, whatever that is. When you are connected to what I call your hunger or fullness cues, you are then able to honor them and therefore make changes to the way you eat and how you eat. So you need to be connected with yourself. And then also, just from a health standpoint, when you're in tune with your body, you're kind of in tune when something's off, right? And we know that prevention, or treating something quicker, sooner than later, we have the best outcomes. And that, not even just nutritionally, but just from a overall in health. So you really want to be connected and self-aware.
We could talk for hours. We don't have hours. On the whole notion of being connected to your body. And you and I, in our several Zooms beforehand, we never talked about it we should at another point, but what you just said, it is so vital and so important to be connected to your body. I could talk to you for a long time about it, and it's so brilliant for you to talk about that, because people don't even know what that means. It's knowing your body and reacting, and in some cases that could be life saving. Long story, not for now, but what you said was brilliant, because it really, and I'm a poster boy for being connected to your body, how important that is. And people may not even comprehend that, it's too abstract. What does it mean? It really means powerful stuff. Not for now, maybe you'll come back, we'll talk more about that. What do you personally see people struggle with the most in regards to eating in their health? What is the biggest struggle that people have eating in their health and stuff?
First thing that comes to mind is having that all or nothing mentality. I think people take on nutrition the way they would take on maybe a training for a marathon or training for something that has an ending, right? It has an end date. And when we get in that paradigm that it's all or nothing, we kind of set ourselves up for failure. Nutrition, as you've probably noticed with some of my responses, and it's not to be difficult, it's to be honest, is that it's not black and white. There's a lot of gray areas, and there's, like you said before, I think, what did you say? It's complex, or I forgot exactly what you said, but that's exactly what there's a lot that goes into it. So I think people make the mistake of it's black and white, or it's, all or nothing thinking. And you have to eat every single day, right? For the rest of your life. So I think people struggle with living in the gray, if you will.
Okay. Curious, why does the work you do mean so much to you? Because I can see it's so evident, your passion for what you do. Why does it mean so much to you?
I think in short, it's because I want people to be able to have their health, and this physical body that we're in is the vessel for our spirits, our souls. And I think one of the main reasons we're here, the purpose of life, is to be able to express that, and for yourself and for the world. So if we're overcomplicating something, again, we do every day, nutrition, and it's a world that can be very shameful, we're missing out on what life's about. And I'm just passionate about people feeling empowered and not ashamed, and then having their health in order to live out their soul's purpose, if you will.
Okay. We're kind of winding down a bit, but this is a little bit of off topic. We have a couple minutes. Nutrition is an ever evolving science, and I think I mentioned I read so many different articles every day on health things and nutrition things, and but the point I'm making, your work, your field is evolving every day, and there are things that are acceptable today that may change tomorrow. I'm thinking about a movie. It was a Woody Allen movie called Sleeper, and he sleeps for 500 years and he wakes up. They unwrap him. He's covered in aluminum foil, and he owned a health food store, and they froze him and they unfreeze him 500 years later, and when they're unwrapping him and he opens up his eyes after 500 years, all 5 doctors who are unwrapping him are smoking cigarettes. And the first thing he said after waking up for 500 years, what are you guys doing? That's really bad for you, smoking. And they said to him, well, it was finally discovered that smoking is actually good for you.
Mhm.
So the point that I'm making to you is your field is ever changing, and you really have to stay on top of things. That's what the question is. It's such an ever changing, almost by the hour kind of thing.
Mhm.
Mm.
Definitely. Yeah, and that I think that is again goes back to it's not black and white. And I think a lot of people who might not be familiar with science and the health field, and we all crave that certainty as humans, right? So, that might be alarming for some, but that's just how it is. We do our best with what we know until we know better, and then we evolve. And that nutrition absolutely is always ever changing, ever evolving.
And that's why people, this is a plug for you, your work, your field, why people need to have someone to guide them on their journey, because this is an ever changing, it, gosh, is it ever changing? I marvel at my intake of knowledge, and but how important what you do really is, and that's why your work is the future. It is a big part of the future. I was very gifted and privileged because about an hour before we went on air here. By the way, it's June 23rd. I always like to throw in a date so people know. Uh, um, it's June 23rd. It's summer. Uh,
Mhm.
it's summer. But I was privileged. You sent me a link to a podcast that you do called the Deep Dietitians that you do along with Lucy Cole.
Yes.
And I listened to this podcast, A Hot Girl Summer.
Hmm.
Not necessarily a topic that I would be drawn to, but
Hmm.
I listened to it and it was great. And there was some really interesting stuff you talked about. If you want to talk about your podcast, how this came about, I mean, this is contemporary stuff
Hmm.
that you can really sink your teeth into. Own your, some of the notes I took, own your truth, your body, which you talked about a little bit, be authentic self, courageous, on top of physical. So anyway, if you could, the last thing I'll ask you is to talk a little bit about your podcast, promote it, and Lucy, and yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you for checking it out. I know that that episode might have not been exactly geared towards geared towards you, but nonetheless, there's some key concepts anyone I think can benefit from. Yeah, the Deep Dietitians podcast is a project that Lucy and I, a fellow dietitian, we kind of call ourselves the Deep Dietitians because, as you can tell by now, we both agree that nutrition isn't just about the food. It's this holistic view. We see it mind, body, and soul. And the podcast is really geared towards women who struggle with the emotional components and these other things that get in the way of just receiving the science of nutrition and being able to implement it. So we keep it real on there. We share from our own experiences, our clients' experiences, because again, it goes back to that, the reason why the work means so much to me, of helping people sift this out, normalize their nutrition so they can be empowered to live out their, their authentic lives.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, the topic wasn't necessarily for me, and I probably was on the upper. I was probably on the upper age bracket thing. It was a very youthful podcast, but I enjoyed it. So we did good. You did good. and this was just an intro. I would love you to come back, and we talked about that too. Come back and come back with whatever. Come back with Lucy. Talk about stuff. Maybe do one of your podcasts here, and we'll do a video of it. Because I truly and I was totally enthralled in listening to you, because everything I'm observing from my world, you're so right on.
Mhm.
That was a term from the 60s, I think, right on. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's where I come from, the 60s. So I want to thank you so much, Michelle. Do come back. This was great. Your work is so interesting. I encourage people to check you out and pursue nutrition, and have somebody guide you, because it's life.
Mhm.
And I thank you so much for your time and your energy. It's going to be a nice weekend, so hit the beach.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you, Calvin, so much. It was my pleasure to talk with you today. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. And again, please do come back, and thanks, Michelle.
Yes. Thank you.
Bye-bye.